The remake of Trigun has garnered a lot of controversy surrounding its announcement and release. While it's fair to complain about how it adapted the original manga, I want to review this as a product by itself. Regardless of its changes to the source material, does Trigun Stampede have a good story? Is it told well? And is it for you? First, I have to address the most apparent thing about this anime. It's 3D CG animated. While I personally would always prefer 2D animation to 3D, it's actually very well made. Serious work went into creating this show, and most shots look really good. There's still a flair of that anime style, and sometimes that merges into some weird looking moments. But overall, this was not a cheaply made show. I don't like praising CG animation more than I have to, so on to the actual story. This is a little more tricky to decide if it's for you or not. To start out, if you love the original Trigun, you will probably dislike this adaptation. Although it has similar characters and similar situations, this is nothing like the 1998 anime or the manga. Think of this as a parallel universe that has, for the most part, the exact same setting, but a completely different story with new characters that have a few similarities to the universe we've already seen. Now, regardless if you know the original story or not, this anime has some problems. The pace is incredibly fast, which isn't all bad. It gets right into the story and starts building the main plot immediately. Episode 1 through 3 goes from 0 to 100 really fast. This can make it hard to really care about the characters and their situation, although I think it does a pretty good job through their dialogue to make the characters enjoyable to be with. However, the biggest problem is in how much happens in such a short time frame. I think this is especially a problem for people who haven't watched the original. There's quite a few events that show up randomly and aren't set up at all. These are usually things that happened in the manga and 90s anime, but even knowing what they're referencing, they don't really fit with this story. It can be a little overwhelming. There's just so much going on that I didn't really have time to care or understand the characters by the time it was trying to get me to sympathize and root for them. Because there isn't a lot of focus on each plot point presented, a lot of the big moments were very weightless to me. Along with this, Trigun Stampede is edgy. Like, really edgy. People die intense, gruesome deaths, limbs are chopped off with blood squirting everywhere, people can and will die, and a lot of the characters are depressed with their heavy, tragic backstories that weigh them down, which you can hear in the voice acting.
This village, it isn't your first visit, huh?
I don't know very much. Only.
Unfortunately for me, this adds to its weightlessness. With deaths and mass destruction happening so frequently, it kind of feels like it's trying too hard to get you to feel sad and ends up being too much. To the point I actually laughed during a tragedy because of how nonchalant it seemed about causing injuries or killing its characters. I don't want to say the specific moment because of spoilers, but looking at it now, it still makes me laugh, which was very obviously not the intention. It could be I'm just a psycho. Its world is incredibly interesting, as it follows the rules and setting of the original very closely. Despite the dark plot and complicated setting, Trigun Stampede is mostly an action show rather than the slower Western genre that it's based in. And fortunately, the action looks great. The clear visuals and excellent animation, along with some really good choreography, make for some epic moments for its strong focus on action. Overall, Trigun can be a fun and interesting story, with fairly good backstories and quickly paced plot development. Even if it doesn't have the charm of the original, Trigun Stampede is by no means a terrible or lazy anime. If you care for the characters after the first or second episode, I'm sure you'll really enjoy it. However, I have to mention that, especially after just watching the original, I hate this show and what it did to the characters. I would love a faithful adaptation of Trigun, but I think this anime is still a good thing to bring more attention to a fantastic series that has been underappreciated for a long time. If you're interested in watching the original series, whether you like Stampede or not, check out the top video on this end screen. That's all for me. Ciao meow.